Welcome to Sober Dad Crew, the podcast where we talk about all things sobriety, recovery, parenting, music, tattoos, work, and more. For more information, please visit soberdadcrew.com. My guest this episode is athlete and trainer Tyler Murphy. We talk about the role fitness plays in sobriety and recovery, as well as the impending birth of his son. Tyler, welcome to Sober Dad Crew.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So normally my first question is how many kids do you have? But you're in a little different situation. So I'll say, when's the baby's due date?
So right now we're looking at October 10th. And obviously that can change. It could be a little earlier and can be a little bit later. But we're hoping for that sweet spot.
Yeah, they are in charge, those babies.
Oh, yeah.
Unless the doctors then decide it's been too long or something, but usually they come when they're ready to come. And
yeah.
Did you always know you wanted to be a dad?
So being a dad is definitely something I've always wanted to be, but something that I really haven't had in my sights until the last few years. So I always wanted to be a dad, but realistically knew I wasn't ready for quite a while. So,
I mean, it's good that you knew you weren't ready, because that has not stopped a lot of men.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of people just plow in for whatever reason, because it's hard. It's a lot of work to do a good job and be present at it. So good on you for waiting.
Yeah. And I'd like to say I'm pretty lucky it happened like that too.
Right, because things can also just happen.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's part of it. But whether it's planned or just happened, the role is the same in the end.
Yeah.
So you're a big fitness guy, and we have connected on a couple levels. First is my two younger kids did dance stuff at their school with your wife. And I think that's kind of how we first got into each other's orbits. And my youngest is doing this fitness class with you. Is fitness always part of your life, or is it a newer thing?
Fitness has always been a big part of my life. Probably since I was like 6 or 7 years old and getting into sports and stuff like that. Always been active, especially growing up in the foothills of the Adirondack Mountains. Was always outside hiking or playing roller hockey, in the woods playing tag and stuff like that. So I've always been active for most of my life. So now it's kind of just like taken off on a whole nother level. And it's like what I'm about on a daily basis. Just eat, breathe, and sleep. Health and fitness. It's my passion. I love it.
Yeah. Now, does that intersect with recovery for you, or is it separate? Or
I would say that recovery has given me the opportunity to fully dive back into it, because there were other periods in my life where I tried to do that in hopes of obtaining recovery and failed miserably. So now being, over 5 years sober, it's been reversed. So I focused on the recovery portion first, and then everything else kind of followed that.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because early on for me, I became sort of a crazy runner to the point now where like I have to be a walker because I kind of burned a knee out, and it was like, I'm going to run 1,000 miles this year. And it like at maybe the detriment of overall sort of physical health. And I think that a lot of people in recovery, they kind of dive into fitness, which isn't necessarily bad, but replacing, you can't do this straight replacement, right? To your point, you kind of have to manage the recovery, and fitness and running or whatever it is can be part of that, but there has to be this balance. So I kind of do this no metrics thing now. Like I roughly know like where the mile marker is sort of from my house if I'm walking or whatever, but I don't track anymore, because I became like so hooked on those metrics, and like I have to go to the gym Like if it was the winter, I'd go to the gym 6 days a week and I'd run on a treadmill. And then in the nicer weather, it'd be a couple days a week, but I'd be running more. But it really did become a bit of an obsession, which in some ways is like really healthy. But when I had a recent doctor's appointment and she told me my weight, I was like, wow, that's like 20 pounds heavier. Like you've seen me, I'm not a big human being, but I was probably pretty underweight, so I wasn't necessarily, I was being healthy in some ways, right? I was like building muscle and all those things, but I wasn't doing it in probably a thoughtful way.
Yeah. And there's a lot of information that goes behind correct training and all that stuff, learning about the nutrition and your off days, your recovery periods and all that types of stuff. So while it's good to just go out and train, and I do promote that kind of mindset, like if you're unsure of where to start, just go run a half mile or walk 2 miles or something like that. It's good to get moving. But then it's like once you establish that baseline and you've reached this like decent fitness level where you're ready to continue on to the next level, it's like, okay, maybe I should take it upon myself to educate myself through research or maybe talk to a coach and figure out kind of like what the next step is so I don't get hurt here.
Yeah, because it's super easy to like go to Planet Fitness, right? It's cheap.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
All the stuff's there. I mean, that's where I went, right?
Sure.
Like it was like $10 a month. I mean, why not? And, all the equipment's there, but they sort of say they'll help you, but I'm not sure that's entirely true. And you sort of always see their help wanted ads out. And I'm like not hating on Planet Fitness, but they're actually like is education. You can't just sort of hire somebody and be like, oh, now you like work at the place and you're a trainer.
Yeah. I kind of look at Planet Fitness as like the McDonald's or Burger King of gyms, if that makes sense. It's like you can go in there and it's not a whole lot of guidance. It's almost like a quick fix. It's cheap, right? They lure you in with the prices and stuff like that. Now, I could go to Planet Fitness and totally use everything they have and get the perfect workouts in. But someone who's coming off the couch and has no clue where to start, they walk in there, they get their membership, and then you see it all the time. It's like they're self-driven. You don't see people stopping to help them or offer advice or anything like that. But I know they do have trainers. I just think that compared to the number of clients they have, they might be a little understaffed, and that's why you don't see that as much. But
yeah, I mean, I remember, and this was a long time ago because I'm old, taking a weight training class in college, and that's when I was rock climbing all the time. And so my goal was to be strong, but not to be like bulked up. And I think it was one of the football coaches who ran that class. He's like, okay, you need to do like lightweight and body weight and, lightweight lifting, but a lot of reps. You don't need to be throwing as much on there and trying to bench press 3 times. Like that's not your goal, because you need endurance and all that. So there just are a lot of different ways based on your goals too. And you need somebody to sort that out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Are you willing to sort of dive in a little more to your story and, what kind of led into issues with substances and your path through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, basically I kind of picked up my first drink, and started smoking pot around the age that you figure most people probably do, right? When you're hiding it, early teens and stuff like that. And, at first it wasn't a big deal. I mean, I do remember my first drink. It was after a big football game when I was still living up in Potsdam, New York. And we're at my buddy's house and kind of just hanging out. Up until this point, I had never really drank. I always avoided it. But yeah, all I can remember from that is that I thought to myself, when can I do this again? And while it didn't immediately become a problem, that thought kind of carried on into my later years, especially when I was facing hard times in life and wanted a quick escape, right? Booze was that outlet for me in almost any situation. And when I was feeling too good, as alcoholics, we drink rain, sleet, snow, or hail. It's there's not a lot of conditions on why or when we drink. We just drink because we like the effect produced by the booze. So yeah, that kind of rocketed into my mid-teens and my late teens and early adulthood. And, I struggled with it on and off for probably 15 years until I was 28 years old. Found myself in plenty of situations that no person in their late teens or early 20s should find themselves in. Um, Unhealthy relationships, unhealthy friends, um, broken reputation, broken spirit, broken soul, lost passion, lost motivation, everything bad you can think of, basically, internally and externally, until I was just finally done. And thank God life beat me down by the age of 28 because, sometimes it could have even been worse than that.
Right. There's a weird sooner rather than later thing, someone who's my age and just trying to sober up. I don't know if it's easier or harder, but there's definitely a lot more damage that's gone down the line year after year, right? It doesn't stay level. That's like part of the issue.
Yeah.
Was there a moment that kind of like clicked for you, like one big kind of blowout moment, or is it more just that last piece of straw that just felt too weighty?
It was a combination. Just every bad situation I continued to find myself in was getting a little bit worse each time. And up until a certain point, I had half of my family was showing me the tough love, and the other half was still kind of what they call enabling, right? And like not really seeing the complete wrong and in the complete wrong that I was doing, and just still choosing to look at the good and saying, oh, well, this, well, that, every excuse in the book. And those family members finally decided to show me tough love, and it hit real deep, particularly my grandmother, right? And in my grandmother's eyes, and I think this is true for probably most people, right? In grandma's eyes, you can do absolutely no wrong, right? And that was a situation with me. And she was always my savior. She was there to bail me out of any situation you could think of, any and every, right? And then it got to a point where I was 26, 27 years old. I was back at mom's again, in my little brother's old room again, right?
Humbling.
And, very, very humbling. My grandparents, they're snowbirds, so they go down to Florida for the winter. And one of my last memories of being all messed up was my grandmother standing there before they left. And she says, I just want to say goodbye, and we hope that you're alive when we return. And so just to give you a small piece of how dark it was for me, it was dark, and I'll share that. I'm an open book about this stuff, and it's like I share it when I feel like it can be useful. Like I hang around some friends I've met in the last few years, and I don't think they really understand the depth of from which I came and have built upon, which was I built upon nothing, to be completely honest. And, I don't bother to dive into that because, again, it's in the past. I've came a long, long ways. And, I share it when I feel like it can be useful.
Yeah. And I get that. I mean, there was a moment where I was like, oh, right. I'm this sort of successful person that's professional and has a family, and no one looks at me like that's a person that had this struggle. And that's like, no, we got to like put that out there because it's okay. People struggle, right? It's okay to struggle. It's okay for people to know that, especially people who are struggling. Like it's a good thing to know that you can like come out the other side, fix the things in you.
Yeah.
Fix the collateral damage that comes from that.
Yeah. And I think we enter this thing on all different levels, right? And I think that no matter what level we enter sobriety at, we all basically pick up these basic principles that help guide us into being better people all around. One of my best friends today, I met in sobriety, and he's just a hair after me in. And, before that, he was making a couple $100,000 a year. he took a year off to get sober and probably still made 100 grand or something like that, and him and I come from two completely different backgrounds. But today, when we get together, it's like two of the same people, right? You wouldn't be able to tell the difference in either one of us, with the exception of personalities, obviously. But it's very humbling. It's very awakening, and I love the spirituality piece to it. That everyone who's doing this sober thing, hopefully, is trying to become a little bit better every day. Every day we wake up.
Yeah, I mean, I always sort of not really joke, but I say, every day is like, I want to be a little better like dad, a little better husband, a little better coworker, a little better person in this totally zany, like hard, like the world's really weird right now. So like, what's that thing I can do every day to maybe make some little difference, which feels pretty hard right now, right? Like things are just nuts out there.
Oh yeah.
Like no matter where you land politically, it's just pretty wild out there and pretty hard. I mean, I work on West State Street in Ithaca, and there are people just like struggling out there.
Oh yeah.
And not enough beds for people who are unhoused, not enough treatment opportunities for people who like need help.
Yeah.
So what are those incremental things like that I can try and do?
It's insane out there. And speaking of Ithaca, my wife and I were actually out there about a month and a half ago for our anniversary. And we were down in the Commons. And, I had been to Ithaca over the years on and off. I used to party with the Cornell kids back in the day. And, it's rough out there right now. I was surprised.
I also sort of joke now because in New York, marijuana is legal. I'm like, Ithaca just smells like weed.
Yeah.
It just like everywhere you walk, I was like, it's like in the pavement now or something. And, I'm okay. I don't want people to go to jail, right, for substance use. I don't think that's productive. I don't think piling our jails full of people who are disproportionately poor and people of color is good. But I also don't need to like share in your partaking of the weed or watch you smoking while you're driving. Like you shouldn't be driving with like an open beer. So probably you shouldn't be driving with a joint. I think that's part of the law.
Yeah.
Hard to know, but it is pretty interesting because I lived in closer to Ithaca all this time. But when I met my wife, now I'm, up in the Aurora area. And that's a little totally different vibe than Ithaca, but and Ithaca is a great city and it's not unique. We did a little family trip to New York. I don't know, when was it? It was in the spring. It was a similar vibe in the city. Just lots of open smoking and there's some level, I don't actually care what people do. Like if you really want to do stuff, like whatever, it's not my problem to deal with, but I don't need you to share it with me and my family.
Jen and I have this joke, like when we'll be out, we'll say it smells like legalization. But it's not as funny as it was at first because it's almost everywhere and every day now. But
yeah, and I think, and it's interesting because I have sort of this range of age of kids. I have two older kids from my first marriage who are 17 and 21, and the 17-year-old's like half of the bathrooms in her school are locked now because people are in there vaping whatever they're vaping.
Yeah.
And she's like, it's like terrible because you need to go, like, you have like 2 minutes between classes. You like got to go to the bathroom and like, there's one bathroom available in the whole school. They got vape alarms and all this stuff.
Wow. Yeah.
Which doesn't really seem to be getting to the root of the issue of the, like, why this is happening. I get you're a school and you need to sort of stop it, but are you even beginning to think about the why? I don't know.
Yeah, the vapes is a whole nother thing. All the kids have them nowadays.
Yeah, that wasn't around in my day.
No, we didn't have anything close. I mean, if God forbid, a ninth or 10th grader was smoking a cigarette outside the high school or something like that, you might have, thinking back, you might have got expelled for that back then.
I'm trying to think. I remember once like being in the urinals in the high school and someone was smoking like next to me. And the principal walked in and the guy's like trying to slide the cigarette. It was very funny
Yeah.
because the principal's like, "What's going on?" And it's like smoke, like coming up from between his legs. I was like, "You're not getting out of this." I don't know what his like punishment was, but I was like, I really don't think there's a way out of this scenario for you, because you were sort of literally caught red-handed.
Oh, yeah.
Do you do a program for sobriety and recovery? Like, you
yep.
do 12-step?
I do. Yep. When I came into the program, I was kind of just floating around a little while, and then I found a 12-step program. And I did the whole deal there. They recommend that you get a sponsor and you work the steps and all that stuff. And so that's what I did. And that's basically what I continue to do today, just help other guys and stay connected to people who are sober and stuff like that. As you get your life back in order, because again, I started from ground zero. I was on very, very low bottom baseline, right? So when I first started out, I didn't have that many priorities or responsibilities. It was kind of just building this sobriety base. So early on, it was just like meeting after meeting and going out to eat with guys who were sober and rebuilt their lives and stuff like that. And then 1 year, 1 month, 6 months at a time, came a better job and better friendships and, getting back into activities I used to like to do before, all the vices took over and stuff like that. And life gets busier. So as life gets busier, as it's kind of a little bit harder to finagle everything in together. So now it's just like sobriety is still priority number one because, for me, without that, everything else crumbles eventually. So it's just like making sure that's on the calendar on a daily and weekly basis in some form or fashion, right? For me, that looks like getting up in the morning, usually about 4 a.m. If I snooze, it's still about 4:15 or something like that. I have some readings that I do. I meditate, kind of get my mind ready for the day. And then I'm at the gym by about 4:15, getting ready to coach my first class in the morning, so, and that's something I don't miss. I do that, Sunday through Sunday, up early, readings, coffee, trying to get centered. I probably started that about 13 months into my sobriety or something, because I was kind of just floating around, like I said, and didn't really have the direction that I was given eventually. So that's been great. That's been very pivotal in my recovery.
Yeah, I don't meditate as much as I used to, and I didn't do a program. I just sort of stopped. I mean, there's a lot of ways forward. I think for whatever reason, I turned off that road early, before things got real bumpy. And I think that made a big difference for me. But I did a bunch of therapy and I did a lot of meditation, and meditation's hard, like being still in your head. Cause that was my thing, is I would get really stuck in my head. Yeah. And that's where, for me, the anxiety and depression thing, I figured out at one point, I was like, oh, anxiety and depression, they're so reliable. They will always be there for you.
Yeah.
Like I was like, everybody's against me, all this stuff, but you open that door a crack. And I think substances are this too, right? If you let that in a little bit, it's so reliable. Yeah. I mean, until it's not, yeah. Right? Because eventually you're drinking more, doing whatever, more and more and more. But that's the like constant vigilance thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm 14 and a half years now. Like I've almost lose track a little bit. It's been long enough. So it is sort of like, I don't have to actively think about it.
Yeah.
And I know that doesn't always happen to everybody, but a lot of people I've talked to who are in longer term recovery, there is a point where like, oh, right, this is such a fiber of my being. I mean, my stepkids don't know me any other way. I mean, my wife is sober. Like that is foundational to our relationship. It's hard. We just had a hard weekend. We just moved my mom into memory care for Alzheimer's, which was fucking hard thing to do. But never once did I think like I want to have a drink to like manage the emotions around this.
Right. It's so far in the past for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And having a strong partner that's like got your back and all that. But, I could see how the temptation would be there. Sometimes it doesn't take much. Do you get tempted much or?
I can honestly say it's probably been 3 years or more since I've been tempted. I like to tell people that I don't think about drinking and I don't think about not drinking. So that second one there, the not thinking about not drinking, which, sounds kind of like a tongue twister kind of, that was the biggest piece for me, right? Because I know that I can't drink, right? And I thank God I have the wisdom today to know that I can never have one safely. But that second part, obsessing about not drinking and sitting in that self-pity and feeling bad for myself, like, why can't I go do this like everyone else can? When that left, man, that opened up a whole new door of freedom. I can go out. It's my wife, she's not a big drinker, but before she was pregnant, she's the type to just have a couple, say we're in the Adirondacks hiking and we go to a pub after or something, she'll have one or two drinks and won't even finish it. Right. So, she's not a big drinker, which is also a big help. And it's just like, I don't think about it and I don't think about not being able to have it, and it's great.
Yeah. I mean, shedding those kind of burdens. I mean, I remember when I got divorced and I grew up in Maine and my folks are in Maine. And I was like, why? I don't want to be here. I don't want to be like in Ithaca and the Finger Lakes. And then I was like, wait, my kids are here, and it's that sort of grass is always greener, or focusing on all the things you can't have instead of looking at, like, I have a tattoo that says greatly blessed. And that was what my grandmother always said. She always talked about being greatly blessed, and this was a woman who, my grandfather was in the Navy in World War II and had my mom and her two sisters in Washington State, by herself during World War II, had seen some stuff, but she's, always, and I try and sort of live this philosophy, like, always remember your blessings. It's so easy to like focus on and obsess over all the things you can't or don't have that you don't see all the gifts that are in front of you.
Sure. Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned your tattoo. My first tattoo, which is right here on my forearm, says truly blessed.
That's that's awesome.
Isn't that insane? And I got that a long time before I got sober. But when I got it, I had made it through a tough situation that a lot of people wouldn't have made it through. It was just a situation that I put myself in, kind of, just drinking, hanging with the wrong crowd and running around with some punks. And I was a punk around that time. So I was grateful to have made it out of this specific situation. And I left some old habits behind at that time. That's the thing. When I say I started from, again, back to ground zero, right? It's not only the drinking and stuff I left behind. I had some other, my whole mindset was just skewed in a way that someone's mind shouldn't be, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of digging deep. And, it kind of goes into what I do today with my running and triathlons and stuff like that. People are like, why do you do it? And it's like, I'm running at the guy I used to be. I'm running towards those demons. I'm fighting those demons off every time I lace my shoes up in the morning or go for a 50-mile bike ride, or I'm fighting those demons off. It's it's a struggle some days, but it has to be done. It's a daily job.
Yeah, and it's there's this Pearl Jam song, Inside Job.
Yeah.
And
yep.
The guitar player wrote it, right? And he's in recovery, and it's like so much of that is this internal work. Like putting down the drink in some ways is the easiest part of the thing.
Yep.
Right? It's to your point, like I don't drink, but I'm not upset that I can't or drink. Like and then that's freedom, right? Because then you can go out to a show or be around it and it's not a big deal. When did you meet your wife in this journey?
So Jen and I met about 4 or 5 months prior to me getting sober. So that would have been early winter, late fall of 2019. And we kind of just were both like on the dating scene, I guess you would say. And we connected, and I'm about a year and a half older than Jen. So she had actually bartended at a bar that I used to frequent often, but we never like knew enough to hang out or anything like that. So when we connected, we went to dinner once, and then I think we went to a Syracuse game. And I was on the decline at that time, but I was putting on my game face when I was dating. Obviously, right? You want to try your best to be as much of a car salesman as you can when you're not living right. So I was pretty successful at doing that for a couple months, and then eventually my demons really came out to play, and there was no more throwing shade on anything that was going on in my life. And I said, hey, I need to go and get a little bit of help. This is what's going on in my life. This is who I am, but this is who I've been for X amount of years now, and I got to go fix it. And, lo and behold, she was like, well, I've really come to care about who you actually are, and I love that person. And so from there, she just kind of never left my side.
Yeah, that's that thing about being seen, right? The true part of you that you don't have to hide any of that. And that with Alexis, it's what it is. Like, we're all flawed, right? Like, we all have things about ourselves that we love. We all have things about ourselves that we want to improve. But like that person that's like there for you in your lowest moments and your highest moments, but your lowest moments, and just they got you. I don't even know. You can't even put words to how meaningful that is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great feeling too, just to know that you have someone to stand by your side no matter how bad or good things are, right? Because you also want that cheerleader as well.
And I think, going into parenting too, that kind of connection, because it's hard. And well, you sound like you already don't sleep, so you're like prepared for that, right? Like you're ready for that. You're already up in the middle of the night. So, but you're gonna have to adjust too. Like, how do you fit the stuff in around the baby gets? There's like, that I think is hard for some people. You go, and we'll have to do a follow up too at some point, like when you're thick into diapers. But it is like, what's that balance? And I'm not good about sort of saying I need to like have a little space. Like Alexis will be like, you need to go downstairs with your records and just put records on for a while and like chill out. I'm not always good about like asking for that, because I feel like, no, it's like my job as dad to be all in all the time, like nonstop. I can't like have a break or whatever. So that's always one of my challenges in parenting, is like allowing myself to sort of step away. Like before we recorded, I was saying everybody else at Seabreeze amusement park today, which is like a zillion % not my thing. People everywhere, hot sun. Yeah. I don't like rides. I was telling you, it was our family. We got married a year ago. So like we did this family honeymoon, we called it, in Maine, with all 4 kids. And we went to an amusement park, and I went on my first roller coaster because I was like, I'm going to do it. Everybody's doing it. I'm going to do it. Halfway through, I'm sitting next to my wife. I'm like, why do people do this? This is like terrible. But also sometimes you do those things for family and all that. And, I guess everyone should go on a roller coaster, once in their life.
Yeah. It can be addicting. So again, I think I went on my first one. It was definitely in adulthood at some point. I forgot when, but I never want to. And then when I'm on it, I'm screaming the whole time. And then as soon as I get off, I don't know what hits me, some type of endorphin. It's like, that was freaking awesome.
Yeah,
And then I want to do it
remember
again.
on that same trip, my now 12-year-old did one of those ones that like pulls you up like really high, like 200 feet up, and then it drops. I was like, that just looks terrible. But some people just like love whatever it is, the rush that comes with that. I probably secretly am just afraid I'm just gonna like vomit off the thing and be the guy that like embarrasses myself and everybody at the amusement park. Now, bumper cars, I like bumper cars.
Yeah,
those
are fun. Yeah,
I get pretty competitive on the bumper cars. It's maybe because I like Formula One racing, and that's the closest I'm going to get is like bumper cars or go karts or something. But finding those family things, or where do you kind of give and take and all that it's an interesting challenge of parenting and balance and all that, because we got like you work all day. It's just busy. It's a full schedule.
Yeah. I'm kind of, they say there's no way to prepare. But a lot of my friends, especially my buddies who have kids already, they're like, be ready to not be training all the time and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't really fight it when they say that, but because I know myself well enough today to know that if I have to get up at 2 a.m. and go to sleep at 6 p.m. to get up and run 10 miles, I'll do it. I'll do it.
You do need to figure out how to, stay healthy for both parents in it. I mean, and the baby stuff it's really pretty short. I mean, I got a kid that's 21 now. The whole thing seems like it's short. Like, it's astonishing to me after 21-year-old. I'm like, what? It's a blink of an eye. But that really, really little like infancy stuff isn't that long. So, eventually you might throw a trailer on the bike, right? Hey, that's training. You got more weight. There are ways to do those things. And eventually your kids get a little older and they can do those things with you. And that's also cool.
Yeah. And we're so excited. And, we've kind of talked about what kind of parents we want to be. We've decided to kind of not really push anything onto him when he's born, rather than just set examples. So like, obviously I'll be doing running and, CrossFit stuff and cycling. And so he'll see some of that. And my wife will be doing dancing and teaching and, stuff like that. So we'll let him pick whatever path.
Yeah. I've said on this show before, it's not your job to make them love the things you love. You want to show them all these things, right?
Yeah.
Music, all, the variety of things so they can find their path. But it's not your job to make them love the things you love. It's your job to support them in what they love. Because your kids are going to be healthier. Yeah. They're going to be less likely to get in trouble if they have, could be soccer, could be music, could be theater, whatever the thing is, where they feel like they fit and they feel like they find their people. Because watching like a middle schooler struggle right now, an athletic girl, who's better than a lot of the boys, and they're like crappy to her. It's like, she's just a good athlete. You should be less of a jerk and like train more. She works hard, she's talented, but she also works really hard and comes with a good attitude. Yeah. Like, don't push her during practice because she's better than you. Figure out how to be better.
Yeah. And I see that with athletes too. I do some, a handful of camps and stuff at the gym where I train. And, there's always a couple who work harder than some of the others. Right. And that's noticeable. But, I try to push everyone the same, but those who are working a little harder, I push them just a little more. And that's just off of experience of pushing those who weren't working as hard for a while. And, sometimes it's just impossible. Right. And I feel like that starts at a certain age and carries into adulthood. Like, we're only going to work harder when we hit a place when we're ready to work harder. in particular for me, that started at a younger age, right? I'll be exceptional when I'm able to tap in mentally to something that allows me to want to be more exceptional.
Yeah, and I think that it's interesting with like young athletes where they start to figure out the mental game, right? That makes such a big difference. I mean, my oldest, he played tons of soccer, and the 12-year-old, she's playing tons of soccer. And when they figure out the mental part of the game and how to see the whole field and actually what's going on, that's when they really excel. They stop being the person who's just trying to always break away and get the goal. And they become the person that pulls the whole team together. Because it doesn't matter who scores, right? Like at the end of the day, the team wins or the team doesn't win. And, you know, for a little while, you might remember who scored, but they didn't get there by themselves. I'm always like, every pass in soccer is an assist that builds on an assist that builds on an assist. And I kind of think life is like that too. And being a member of the community, and sort of back to that, the world is sort of a wild place right now. Is like, how do we build community? How do we find the connections with people and not the differences with people?
Yeah, for sure. It's tough out there right now, you know. It's almost like a dog eat dog world out there right now, you know. So you got to wake up every morning and kind of just be on your A game and be willing to accept what's going on out there and be willing to kind of open up. And, you know, personally, I'm as vulnerable as I can be on a daily basis, because we don't have a lot of that out there, you know. And some days I am when I don't want to be. Some days I'm having crap days, and I'll still go into, whether it's a work environment or a friend setting or family setting, and I just try to be the same guy, right? I pride myself today on just consistency. I try to wake up every morning and just tap into Tyler. Like, you know, Tyler knows exactly who Tyler is on an every morning basis, which is all I want. That's all I want, because I know if I can do that, then other things will kind of just fall into place. And even when they don't, it'll still work out in some way. But as long as I know who I am when I wake up in the morning and I can be that person consistently, I'm content with that.
But I think that's the work, right? That's the work of 12-step, or that's the work of seeing a therapist, like whatever it is that helps you dig down through the mess and the darkness in you, that whether you're drinking or not is there. It's like, that's that work that lets you sort of tap into who you truly are. I mean, I always remember a little bit feeling impostery in positions, you know, like, well, why do I have this job? I'm not like the right person for this. Or as a single parent, the sort of fear around losing a job, it actually made me like a worse employee. Fear of making mistakes, I think, is such a huge thing. And I see it in younger staff now. I'm like, it's cool. Like, people make mistakes. Like, that's just life. Yeah. How you respond to the mistake is the bigger thing, right? Do you try and deny it? Do you try and blame somebody else? Or do you just say, man, I'm sorry, I messed that up, and these are the 3 ways I'm going to try and make it better, and so it won't happen again? That's what I'm looking for in like kids or coworkers or whatever it is like, don't fear the mistake. I mean, that's often growth comes from mistakes, or growth comes from losing games or not winning the race. If you just win every race, I mean, you can still grow, but where's the goal? So it's, you know, like I said, it's that sort of fear thing is an interesting enemy.
Yeah, for sure. And I can relate with that imposter syndrome there too. I mean, multiple times over the last few years, I've gotten hit with that, and it's just like shutting that down. But I'm careful to like shut that down without too much ego in there. And I think that's another big thing that helps me be who I am every day, is like acknowledging how far I've came without having the explosive ego that I used to have in there. because that's my like number one way to like crash and burn is like waking up and saying, I know I got this. I know I'm great at this. I'm not going to fail at this. While I do wake up and I'm excessive and obsessive, I am those two things without the ego, if that makes sense. It's just I wake up and I take the action. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I know that if and when I take this action, that it can't be a worse outcome.
Yeah, I say a lot at work or whatever, like ego is the enemy, right? And then, or work hard and stay humble. There's always somebody better than you are. There's always somebody smarter than you are.
Yep.
It's not a big deal. Who cares? But like ego for sure is just, when we put it aside, like we become better people. I think we're more productive. I've not found a lot of like goodness that comes from having ego. Take that energy and like redirect it, like both inwardly towards like being a better person and externally into like that sort of thing I said earlier. How do I make the world incrementally a better place?
Yeah. And I think with the ego, it just opens up a door of so many like demons that can be avoided easily by eliminating the ego, right? So like when I'm like moving based off decisions that my ego makes, now I'm opening up the door for comparison to other people, right? Now I'm opening up the door to spreading myself too thin and making decisions that are irrational because I know I got this. And I'm just opening up that door for all these things that lead to ultimately self-destruction based on my past. And it's like I get in this game of, how can I be better than this person or that person? When in reality, I just need to be better than who I was yesterday. Run one more mile, right? Get one more client, right? Whatever it is, financially, spiritually, read one more book, one more page of a book, just do one more thing than I did yesterday instead of worrying about this person. Because especially for me, it's when I worry about one other person, it ends up being like 10 other people or 20 other people. And now here I am, and I'm in competition with all these people silently. And I haven't been in this place in a really long time. But speaking of the past, I'm sitting here, I'm in competition with all these other people. And my brain is like a circus, right? And that's when I don't know who I am, because I got so many characters in my brain because I'm comparing myself to, Tom, Sam, and Joe, just throwing some names out there. And, it's messy. It's real messy. Ego has to go.
Well, what do they say? Run your own race. Or watching the youngest, play baseball. And when little kids play baseball and they hit the ball, what do they almost universally do? They're paying attention to where the ball went. They're not going towards the base.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter where that ball is. You need to just be like going towards that next thing, that next target. And that's the base, right?
Run.
Stop looking at whatever's happening behind you. It's not actually going to impact you. You just need to move to the next thing. And it's just classic. They hit the ball and they're like, whoa, look at it go. Like, no, start running.
Yeah.
And that's such a metaphor for life. Like you get so distracted by everything that's happening around you that you don't just keep your eye on the prize. And usually the eye on the prize is the next step. Like I remember coming out of sort of single parenting. I didn't have a lot of money. And it was like, okay, I'm in this job. Like, what's the next step to get to the next one that's going to pay me more? And then if I do that, what can I do? And it was such a good example for my kids on just like incremental improvement.
Right.
Like you can be in a place, but that's not the place you have to exist. You have to think about what the next move is. And I say this to sort of younger staff, like think about, where do you want to be in 5 years? Where do you want to be in 10 years? Now, how are you going to get there? Right? Because, it's two things. Yes, first base, if you're that kid running to first base, but you also do need to think about how you get into home base. And that's like the 5 years and the 10 years are like, okay, those are your goals. Goals don't mean anything without a plan to achieve them.
Yeah.
So are you getting stocked up on diapers? Are you
Oh
there
yeah,
yet? Got your
oh
go
yeah.
bags?
We have more clothes than he'll probably even go through right now, between family, friends, and just picking stuff up. And that actually makes me think of how selfless I'm already becoming for this kid. I don't know why, but I went to Destiny USA, which I usually try to avoid nowadays. But I was there about a month. it's You never know what's going to go on when you're there. But I was there about a month and a half ago, and I was in Foot Locker, and I think I needed like some new running shoes or something. And all I left was a pair of baby Crocs.
Cute though.
Yeah, they're nice. They're tan, and they'll look good on them, hopefully. And I FaceTime my wife. I was like, I'm leaving Foot Locker. She's like, oh my God, another pair of running shoes. And I'm like, no, I actually got some baby Crocs. So she's like, it was funny. But,
Yeah, Destiny USA. But and this is like a wild tangent. It's a big mall around here for those that aren't local, but it's sort of the epicenter of sort of some trouble now. And it just is indicative of the complexities in the world where we live, and how having a world and an environment where people are often left behind and then have to do things that probably they wouldn't otherwise do. I mean, we talk a lot about having privilege in my family, and like we can get the kids into sports stuff. If you want music lessons, you can get music lessons, like and there's a lot about that in this country that for me as a white guy, like I inherently have a level of privilege. And so acknowledging that and figuring out how I walk through the world to try and share what I have in some ways, but also making my kids understand that, they do come from this position where, we're not rich, but we can make the decisions to support their interests. And not everybody has that. And I mean, I remember once I played a lot of music, and my mom said something about this kid who played drums, and they just didn't have a lot of money, and he had this, terrible drum set. And she's like, that kid in a family with more resources could have drum lessons and have a better instrument. And that always stuck with me. Like, right, that's that sort of be grateful thing.
Yeah.
But I guess it's like be grateful, but how are you going to make the world better too? Is like the other side of being grateful for what you have.
Sure. And, there's the other side to that, right? Is obviously first things first, always being grateful and being humble, but also acknowledging how hard you work to put yourself and your family in that position. And that's just speaking from, we didn't have the most when I was growing up, and I've seen both sides of the coin. I've seen people be put in situations where they could have done exceptional and kind of flushed it down the toilet. And I've seen people start with way less and put themselves in a position to where their grandkids will be okay, So
it's that long game.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, Tyler, this was awesome. And we definitely are going to follow up within the next 12 months and see where you're at, and, talk more about early parenthood and all that. But this was awesome. I totally appreciate you being on.
Thank you for having me. Great conversation. And I'm looking forward to our follow-up for sure.
Thanks for listening. Sober Dad Crew is a DIY project by Stephen Kimball, who writes, edits, and produces the show. To support the show, please review it where you listen to podcasts, or visit SoberDadCrew.com to buy some merchandise or make a donation.